I was 17 when I stood under the burning sun of Mecca, my heart full, my spirit overflowing with purpose. I believed that every step I had taken until that moment had led me there, to the sacred ground where millions of believers walked before me, seeking closeness to God. I was one of them. Eager. Obedient. Certain. From the time I was a little girl, I had memorized the prayers, repeated them every dawn and dusk, wrapped my life tightly around the expectations my family held dear. Islam wasn't just a religion to me, it was the air I breathed, the blood in my veins, the rhythm of our home. My name is Amina. My mother used to call me Noor, her light, because I followed rules without question, and I never caused trouble. I wore my hijab with pride, fasted during Ramadan, and spoke only when spoken to. I didn't go to parties. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even dream recklessly. The Hajj was supposed to be the greatest moment of my life. It had taken years of saving, years of waiting for my father to say yes. When he finally did, I remember my hands trembling. I wanted to cry, not because I was afraid, but because I was honored. At 17, most girls my age were worried about makeup, phones, or silly boys at school. But me. I was preparing for the pilgrimage. I was preparing to please Allah. I arrived in Saudi Arabia with my aunt. It was a sea of white robes and whispered prayers. Everyone moved like a river, circling the Kaaba with reverence, and I felt small, yet significant. I had never seen anything so overwhelming. My heart beat so fast the first time I laid eyes on the black stone that I could barely breathe. I touched my chest and whispered, "Ya Allah, accept this from me." I believed I was walking on sacred ground, that every step I took was counted in heaven. But something happened. Something no one warned me about. Something no one ever talks about. Not in the books, not in the lectures, not in the videos you watch to prepare. It's hard to say out loud even now. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and for a moment, I forget where I am, and I'm back there. Back in the crowd. Back in the place I thought would bring me closer to God, but instead, left me shattered. People think the hardest part about what happened is what was done to my body. But the hardest part was the silence. The disbelief. The way everything I trusted was suddenly unsure. The way the sky looked the same, but nothing underneath it felt safe anymore. The way I screamed on the inside, but nobody saw me. Not even the people who prayed beside me. I didn't know it then, but something inside me began to break apart that day. And sometimes, when things fall apart, you begin to see clearly for the first time. This is my story. Not because I want your sympathy. Not because I want revenge. But because someone, somewhere, needs to know that light can still find its way into the darkest places. Even in Mecca. Even after everything. Especially after everything. My name is Amina. And this is how I lost everything I thought I knew. And found something I never expected. I grew up in a quiet town, where the rooftops were flat, the streets dusty, and the air always smelled like cumin and jasmine. My father was a shopkeeper. My mother stayed at home, caring for my younger siblings and making sure the house ran like clockwork. We didn't have much, but we had faith, and in our family, that meant everything. In our living room hung a framed verse from the Quran, Inna salata wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamata lillahi rabbil alameen. My prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. It wasn't just a verse on the wall, it was the foundation of how we lived. I heard it so many times growing up that it etched itself into my bones. My father, Abdul Rahman, was a quiet man. He didn't smile much, but when he did, it was usually after prayers, or when he taught me something about the Prophet. He'd rest his hand on my head and say, "Amina, you must guard your heart. Your modesty is your shield." Your obedience is your honor. I believed him. My mother, Salma, was gentler, but firm. She taught me how to fold my hijab properly, how to perform wuju, how to keep my gaze low. At night, she'd sit beside me and quiz me on Quran verses before bed. If I recited them perfectly, she'd kiss my forehead and say, "Inshallah, your voice will echo in Jannah." School was routine. I didn't speak much outside of answering questions. I kept my head down. I didn't want attention. I only wanted approval. From my parents. From God. From anyone who could assure me that I was on the right path. My dreams weren't like other girls. I didn't fantasize about weddings or travel. I dreamt of the Kaaba. I dreamt of standing in Iram, hands raised, surrounded by thousands all whispering the same sacred words. I wanted to cry in prostration, knowing I had fulfilled the fifth pillar of Islam. I wanted to feel clean, really clean. I used to pray late into the night asking Allah for one thing. Please, let me go to Hajj before I die. Let me walk where your Prophet walked. Let me leave a piece of my soul in Mecca. I never thought it would happen so soon. When my father announced that I would accompany my aunt on Hajj that year, I couldn't speak. My hands covered my mouth and my eyes filled with tears. I was so excited. I felt honored. I believed it would be the most spiritual moment of my life. We weren't a wealthy family. The money came slowly. My mother sold jewelry passed down from her mother. My father worked extra hours at the shop. Even my older brother gave up part of his savings so I could go. They said I was the most devout, the most deserving. For weeks, I prepared. I read every rule, every dua, every hadith related to the pilgrimage. I memorized the steps, printed a checklist, practiced tying my hijab in the most secure way so it wouldn't slip in the crowd. I fasted every Monday and Thursday to purify myself. I asked for forgiveness from anyone I had wronged, even if it was something as small as borrowing a pen and not returning it. I packed slowly, intentionally. My white prayer dress, a small Quran, a cloth bag of dua cards, a bottle of Zamzam water from the local mosque, and a photo of my family. My mother kissed my cheeks the night before we left. Remember, Amina, you are going to the house of Allah. Carry yourself like you are being watched by angels. I nodded. I believed her. On the plane, I looked out the window and whispered blessings under my breath. I imagined myself circling the Kaaba, tears running down my face, my sins being washed away with every step. I didn't know that my tears would fall for a different reason. That the ground I thought was holy would witness a moment I never asked for. But on that flight, I was still full of hope. I clutched my prayer beads, stared at the clouds, and felt like the luckiest girl in the world. We landed in Jeddah in the late hours of the evening. The air felt thick, like it was heavy with history. It clung to my skin as I stepped off the plane, but I didn't care. I was finally in the land I had dreamed of since childhood. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like I was walking in rhythm with it. My aunt and I moved with the crowd, guided by signs and the distant echoes of instructions. Everyone wore white. Everyone was focused. Everyone looked like they were walking toward something eternal. The drive to Mecca was long, but I didn't sleep. I pressed my forehead to the window of the bus, staring into the blackness of the desert, broken only by headlights and flickers of moonlight. I whispered du'as under my breath the whole way. Ya Allah, make this journey accepted. Let my heart be pure. Forgive everything I've done. We arrived just before dawn. The city was alive. Not in the way my hometown buzzed in the morning, but in a deeper, more spiritual way. You could feel it in the air, the expectancy, the submission. Men and women from every country, different languages, different faces, but all moving toward one direction, like rivers pouring into the ocean. We settled into our temporary lodging and prepared for the rites. The first time I dressed in my prayer garments, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because of how I looked, but because of how I felt. I wasn't Amina the daughter, the student, the girl who kept quiet. I was a pilgrim. I belonged to Allah. That morning, we walked toward Masjid al-Haram. The closer we got, the more I felt my body trembling, not from fear, but awe. I had seen the Kaaba in pictures all my life. I had imagined it in my mind, tried to grasp its size, its presence. But nothing, prepared me for what I felt when I saw it with my own eyes. There it stood. Simple. Powerful. Black and gold. Unmoving yet alive. The Kaaba. I stopped walking. People brushed past me, gently, whispering prayers, eyes filled with tears. But I couldn't move. My eyes burned. My legs felt weak. And then, for the first time in years, I cried freely. My chest heaved as I looked at it. Every prayer I had ever whispered, every mistake I had asked forgiveness for, every time I thought I wasn't good enough, it all poured out of me in that moment. We began our tawaf, circling the Kaaba. 7 times. I held my aunt's hand tightly so we wouldn't lose each other. My lips never stopped moving. I whispered the same phrases again and again, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Here I am, O Allah, here I am. In that crowd, I felt invisible yet completely seen. Like every layer of pride or ego had been stripped away. We were all the same. Equal. Small before the Creator. I pressed my hand to my chest to calm myself, but my heart kept racing. During one of our rests, I sat alone in the prayer area. My aunt had gone to refresh her wudu. I placed my forehead on the marble and whispered prayers I didn't even know I had memorized. I didn't ask for anything worldly. I didn't ask for marriage, success, or even health. I asked for nearness. I asked to be known by God. To be claimed by Him. It was the most sacred space I had ever been in. But behind the sacred rituals, something dark was about to unfold. I didn't know then that shadows could live even in the holiest places. That not every man wrapped in white was pure. That not every hand stretched toward the Kaaba came in peace. That even in the city of prayer, some hearts remained untouched. If I had known what was coming, would I have turned back? Would I have stayed behind with my family? Would I have prayed less boldly? I don't know. All I knew in that moment was that I was right where I had longed to be. My eyes were red from crying, my throat dry from whispering du'a, but I had never felt more connected. I thought God was as close to me as the cloth on my skin. And maybe He was. Even then. Even when I didn't understand what He was preparing me for. Even when I was walking unknowingly toward pain. He was watching. And He wasn't going to leave me. Not even there. It was during Tawaf. I got separated. The crowd had thickened suddenly. One moment, I was beside my aunt, our hands linked tightly as we turned around the Kaaba, the marble cool beneath our feet. The next, someone shifted between us, a man, maybe 2, and I lost her grip. I called her name, once, then again. But the crowd swallowed my voice. Everyone was moving. Forward. Turning. Focused. And I was just, drifting. I didn't panic, not right away. We had agreed on a spot to meet in case something like this happened. I kept walking with the flow of people, eyes scanning, hands tucked close to my body. I thought I'd find her. I thought she'd find me. And then, he appeared. He looked religious. Older. Calm. Dressed in white like everyone else. A beard. Kind eyes. He spoke softly, in Arabic I could barely understand. I thought he was offering help. I thought he was showing me the way back to where I was supposed to be. Sister, don't worry. Come. I'll take you where the women wait. I hesitated. But he spoke with the tone of a man who had daughters. I remember that clearly. That's what made me trust him. That, and the fact that we were in Mecca. In the holiest place on earth. I told myself no one could do harm here. He guided me gently, hand hovering at my back. Not touching, just near. We weaved through people, through columns and side passages. It got quieter. The sound of prayer grew distant. I started to feel something I couldn't name, something off. But it was too late to speak. Too late to turn around. I won't describe the place. Or the moment. Not because I don't remember, but because I remember too well. There are things you carry with you forever, even if no one sees the scars. His voice changed. His eyes changed. He no longer looked like someone's father. He no longer looked religious. He no longer looked like someone. What happened after that didn't last long in time, but it stretched across my soul like an endless night. There were no screams. Not loud ones. No calls for help. Only silence. Only shame. Only the terrible knowing that I was alone, and no one was coming. When it was over, I stood there frozen. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't cry. My body was shaking but my mouth was closed. I looked around, but everything was blurry. I heard someone calling the adhan in the distance. I heard sandals scraping across the tiles. But nothing felt real. I walked back alone. Somehow, I made it through the crowd. My aunt found me eventually. She said my face was white as a sheet. She asked what happened. I told her I was just tired. That I got overwhelmed. That I needed to lie down. And she believed me. Everyone believed me. Because I said nothing else. Because I couldn't. How do you say the unthinkable in a place meant to cleanse you? How do you tell people that the one thing meant to bring you closer to God left you feeling forgotten by Him? That night, I lay on a thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. I tried to pray. I tried to find the words. But every time I whispered Bismillah, it caught in my throat. I wanted to believe Allah saw me. That He cared. That it wasn't my fault. But all I felt was silence. And I hated myself for it. I hated that I let my hand go. I hated that I followed a stranger. I hated that my body had betrayed me. And worst of all, I hated that I was still alive. No one ever talks about this. Not in sermons. Not in lectures. Not in books about Hajj. But it happens. And I know now, I'm not the only one. But back then, I felt like I was. And in the most sacred place in the world, I had never felt more lost. After we returned home, nothing looked different, but everything felt different. The streets were the same. The voices of my siblings filled the house just like before. My mother went back to folding laundry, humming Quranic verses. My father returned to his shop, proud to tell his friends that his daughter had completed the Hajj. But I wasn't the same girl anymore. Something inside me had cracked, and no one could see it. Or maybe they saw it and pretended not to. I don't know. I didn't sleep much after that. And when I did, I'd wake up sweating, choking on my own breath. In my dreams, I was still in Mecca, trapped, voiceless, reaching for someone who never turned around. I'd hear the adhan echoing through my mind like a warning, not a call. I'd jolt awake and press my hand to my chest, trying to remember how to breathe. I began skipping meals. Avoiding people. Avoiding mirrors. Avoiding my mother's gaze. I told her I was just tired from travel. That I needed rest. That I wanted time alone. She smiled and said, "It's normal. The Hajj humbles the heart. Allah is drawing you closer." But I didn't feel closer. I felt empty. And worse, I felt ashamed that I felt that way. You see, in our culture, honor is everything. A girl's worth is measured in silence, obedience, and purity. If something happens to you, and you speak, it's your shame. Not theirs. If you cry too loudly, people will say, "Why was she alone? Why didn't she scream? Why did she trust him?" I knew the questions before they were ever asked. So I kept quiet. I wore the silence like a second skin. It itched. It burned. But I told myself it was better than dishonor. Better than being cast aside. Better than being blamed. But the silence didn't protect me from myself. I began to question, where was God when it happened? I asked quietly at first, so quietly I could barely hear myself. Then louder. Then in the dark, with tears soaking into my pillow, I whispered it over and over like a desperate prayer. Where were you? Did you see me? Did you turn your face away? Was I not enough? I opened the Quran, but the words felt distant, like they were speaking to someone else. Someone who hadn't been broken. Someone who was still clean. I tried to pray the way I used to. The way my mother taught me, slow, graceful, heartfelt. But I kept stopping mid-rak'ah, my forehead resting on the ground too long, too heavy. I waited to feel peace, but all I felt was silence pressing into my skin. At night, I'd sit in the dark, knees pulled to my chest, and just talk. Not loud. Not with formality. Just talk. If you're there, show me. Please. Say something. Do something. Anything. Because I don't know who I am anymore. I didn't tell anyone I was asking those questions. I didn't even write them down. I was terrified of my own doubt, terrified it meant I was ungrateful, or worse. A traitor to my faith. But something inside me had shifted, and I couldn't go back. Not to the girl who thought everything made sense. Not to the certainty I used to carry like armor. Not after what happened. I started searching. Quietly. Carefully. And though I didn't know it yet, something, or someone, had already begun answering. It started one night when I couldn't sleep. The nightmares had come again, and I didn't want to wake my family. So I picked up my phone and put on my headphones. I wasn't even searching for anything at first. Just trying to escape the ache that had settled in my chest since we came back from Hajj. I opened YouTube, expecting to find something distracting, maybe a recipe, or a travel vlog. But somehow, I landed on a video. The title was simple, Former Muslim Shares How She Met Jesus. I stared at it for a long time, my finger hovering above the screen. I almost scrolled past. But something. I don't know what, something made me press play. She looked like me. Young. Covered. Soft-spoken. And she spoke with such honesty, like she had nothing left to lose. She talked about being confused. About feeling lost in silence. About being hurt and then finding something, or someone, who made her feel seen again. I listened, heart pounding. It was like she was giving voice to everything I'd kept hidden in myself. And then she said it, I met Jesus. Not the Jesus I'd grown up hearing about in school, just a prophet, no more. But a Jesus who listened. Who healed. Who called the broken by name. I watched more. One testimony became 2. 2 became 5. Then 10. Different faces. Different countries. But the same thread in each one: pain, questions, and then peace. A kind of peace I didn't recognize, but longed for so deeply it hurt. One night, I came across a clip of someone reading from the Bible. I hesitated. I had never heard the Bible read out loud before. I was taught it was corrupted, unreliable, dangerous. But still, I listened. It was the story of the woman caught in adultery. The religious leaders dragged her in front of Jesus, stones in their hands. Ready to punish. Ready to condemn. I held my breath. I expected Jesus to agree with them. To step back. To judge. But instead, he bent down. He wrote in the dirt. He looked up and said, "Let the one without sin cast the first stone." And one by one, they walked away. When Jesus turned to the woman, he didn't shame her. He didn't ask what she did. He simply said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and sin no more." When I read about Jesus saving the woman caught in adultery, I wept. I cried for her. I cried for myself. Because in that story, I saw myself, dragged by shame, surrounded by voices ready to accuse. And for the first time, I imagined a God who would kneel beside me, not turn away. Who would defend me, not destroy me. Who would look me in the eyes and call me daughter, not disgrace. After that night, I began searching more seriously. I deleted my browser history every time. I wore headphones. I watched videos only when everyone was asleep. But I couldn't stop. The more I heard about Jesus, the more I wanted to know him. I wanted to understand how someone so holy could care about someone like me. Eventually, I found an online Bible. It was terrifying to click on. My hands were shaking. I felt like every word would expose me. But I clicked. I opened to the Gospel of John. And I read. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Those words stayed with me. They followed me through the day. They wrapped around me at night. They felt different from anything I had ever read before, not because they were loud, but because they were gentle. Gentle in a way I had never experienced. Every night, I read a little more. I would sit in my room, the light low, the Quran on one shelf, and now, the Bible open on my lap. I was afraid. But I couldn't stop. My heart was being drawn toward something I couldn't explain. I began to pray again, but differently. I didn't use the formal prayers. I just spoke. Whispered. Quiet words like, "Jesus, are you real? Were you there when I was hurting? Do you see me now? If you are who they say you are, show me." And though I didn't hear an answer with my ears, something inside me started to change. For the first time since that day in Mecca, I didn't feel entirely alone. And that was the beginning. I remember the night clearly. I had cried myself to sleep again, my pillow wet, my heart aching from everything I had buried deep inside. The shame. The silence. The confusion. I had prayed, in the quiet of my room, with my door locked and the volume on my phone turned low. I wasn't sure who I was praying to anymore. Was it Allah? Was it just the ceiling I was speaking to? Or was it the Jesus I had begun to read about, the one who knelt beside broken people, and never turned away? That night, something changed. In the dream, I was walking alone in a wide, empty desert. The sand stretched far into the horizon, and the sky was a deep gray. I felt cold even though the desert should have been hot. I didn't know where I was going, and every step felt heavier than the last. Then I saw him. A man in a white robe, glowing gently, standing beside a well. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at me. But his eyes, those eyes, held a warmth I had never known. Not from my teachers. Not even from my family. It was the look of someone who saw everything about me, and didn't flinch. I began to cry. I fell to my knees, ashamed. I didn't say anything out loud, but it was like he heard my thoughts. My guilt. My pain. My fear. Then he walked toward me and knelt beside me, just like I had read in the Bible when he protected the woman caught in adultery. I was that woman. Not by choice, but by pain. He didn't accuse. He didn't ask questions. He simply said, "I'm with you. I always was. You are my daughter." He didn't shame me. He called me daughter. I woke up gasping, tears soaking my face. But this time, they weren't tears of fear or despair. I felt a strange peace, like a warm blanket wrapped around my heart. The room was still dark. Nothing had changed around me. But something inside me had. It was the first time I didn't feel dirty. It was the first time I felt loved. The days that followed the dream were filled with quiet storms inside me. I couldn't forget his face. The gentleness in his voice haunted me, but in the most healing way. I went back to my secret Bible, flipping through verses I barely understood, but couldn't stop reading. Every page seemed to speak straight to my heart, like a balm on wounds I had never dared show anyone. But with each moment of revelation came the weight of reality, my family, my culture, my world. What would they do if they knew? What would they say if they even suspected? My mind battled itself. I was raised to believe that leaving Islam was the worst betrayal, one worthy of shame, rejection, even death. I imagined my mother's face in tears, my father's cold silence, my brother's anger. I felt the fear press into my chest like a vice. But even that fear couldn't drown out the voice I had heard in the dream. You are my daughter. One night, I couldn't take the torment anymore. I closed the door, turned off the lights, and knelt beside my bed. I whispered, my voice shaking, "Jesus, if you are truly who you say you are, if you really are the Son of God, the Savior. I need you. I can't do this on my own anymore. I accept you. Please save me." And in that moment, something broke open. The tears came, hard and fast. My hands trembled as I covered my face, sobbing not from pain this time, but from release. The weight I had carried for so long began to fall away, layer by layer. I felt a warmth in my chest, like light blooming inside me. No fire. No fear. Just peace. Deep, unexplainable peace. For the first time. I wasn't afraid. I was loved. I didn't know what the road ahead would look like. I didn't have answers for the fear that still lingered in the corners of my life. But I had taken the step. A bold, irreversible step. And in return, I had found something more powerful than fear. I had found love, real, eternal, unconditional love. It didn't take long before my secret unraveled. One day, my younger brother noticed the Bible hidden in my bag. He didn't say anything at first, but the look in his eyes gave me away. A few days later, whispers began to circulate through my house. My mother grew suspicious of my long hours alone. My father watched me differently, colder, sharper. Then one night, after dinner, they confronted me. They found the Bible. The videos. My notes filled with scripture. My trembling silence was all the confirmation they needed. What followed was an explosion of betrayal, shouting, tears. My mother wept as if someone had died. My father yelled words I never thought I'd hear. "You've disgraced us," he said. "You are no longer my daughter." My brothers refused to look at me. I was no longer their sister. I was something shameful, a traitor to the faith and to the family name. They took my phone. I was locked in my room. I heard the word arranged marriage whispered in the hallway. Threats of being sent away. Rumors of corrective measures. I was terrified. That night, I escaped. Through a small window. With nothing but a backpack and the clothes on my back. The streets were dark. The air cold. But I kept walking. Eventually, I found refuge, through an underground network of believers I had once found online. A kind Christian woman took me in. She had heard stories like mine before. She gave me a blanket and said, "You are safe now." Following Jesus cost me everything. But I found my soul. I had lost my family, my home, my identity in the eyes of the world. But I had finally found truth. I had finally found freedom. And even in hiding, even with fear lurking just outside, I felt a strength rising inside me, because I knew I was no longer alone. The first few weeks after I escaped were quiet but painful. I was safe, yes, but I was also broken. The memories of what I had endured, the assault, the rejection, the loneliness, haunted me like shadows that refused to leave. But then came something I never expected: love from strangers. The Christian woman who took me in brought me to a small house church. They didn't ask for proof or explanations. They simply opened their arms. They prayed with me. They cried with me. And for the first time in my life, I felt what true community looked like. No pressure. No fear. Just love, honest and healing love. She connected me with a gentle pastor and his wife. They introduced me to counseling. At first, I was hesitant. But the sessions became sacred ground, where I could finally speak about the assault, the betrayal, the confusion. No one rushed me. No one judged me. Just quiet compassion. One night during prayer, the pastor looked at me and said, "You're not dirty. You're not damaged. You are beloved." That sentence broke something inside me. And then something new began to grow. I started journaling my story. At first, it was just for me. But slowly, I began to share bits of my testimony in small gatherings. I met others, survivors of trauma, seekers of truth, even former Muslims who had found Christ too. Their stories gave me strength. And mine gave them hope. Peace didn't come all at once. But it came, like a gentle sunrise after a long, dark night. I started to laugh again. I started to sing again. I wasn't defined by what happened to me. I was defined by who loved me, Jesus. He turned my ashes into beauty. I was no longer just the girl who survived. I was a daughter of the King. And healing was no longer a dream, it was my new reality. I want to speak now, to the girls who feel broken. To the ones who've been hurt in secret, who cry in the dark where no one sees. I see you. I was you. You're not alone. What happened to you was not your fault. You didn't deserve it. No amount of shame, no religious rule, no fear of dishonor should ever silence your pain. You are not dirty. You are not ruined. You are deeply, deeply loved by a God who weeps with you. There were nights I wanted to disappear. I didn't know who I was anymore. I thought God hated me. But I found out something so powerful it changed my life. Jesus doesn't turn away from the broken. He walks straight into our pain and lifts us out with love that doesn't demand perfection, only surrender. To every Muslim girl who has questions, but is too scared to ask, I was once there too. I was terrified. I thought I'd be killed for even thinking about Jesus. But he found me anyway. In a dream. In scripture. In whispers of truth that wouldn't let go. And I want to tell you, if you're questioning, it's okay. You're not evil. You're searching. And there is a God who wants to be found. Jesus didn't come for the perfect. He came for the bruised, the ashamed, the ones the world casts aside. He didn't shame me. He didn't ask for a list of good deeds. He simply called me daughter. And now, I want the whole world to know what he gave me: peace, not fear. Love, not judgment. A home, not just in this life, but forever. You don't have to carry the weight of silence anymore. There is hope. There is healing. There is freedom. And his name is Jesus. If he could love a girl like me, he can love you too.
If you found this story moving, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful testimonies.